Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
I am.
Excellent. Today we're heading back to medieval Europe.
Always a fun time.
It is. It is. And you know me, I love a good conflict.
Oh, I know you do.
So today's deep dive is going to be right up your alley. We're talking about the War of the Keys.
War of the Keys.
War of the Keys.
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one. Okay, so picture this. 13th century Italy.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
We got the Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II, butting heads with Pope Gregory IX. It's a showdown for the ages.
Wow, Emperor versus Pope. That's a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal. And get this, to understand this whole thing, we're going to be looking at chronicles from both sides. We're going to be reading papal letters. We're even going to be diving into some medieval poetry.
Poetry. That's an interesting source.
Right. It's going to be fascinating.
You know, what really strikes me about this conflict is that it kind of flips the script on how we usually think about the Middle Ages. You know, you always hear about the church being all powerful.
Right, right.
But here we have a secular ruler like Frederick II, who's not just challenging the Pope's authority, he's actually going to war with him.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, how did we get to a point where a pope is leading armies against a Christian emperor?
Yeah, it's wild.
Okay, so to really untangle this whole mess, we need to understand what led to this clash. Like, what were the roots of this tension?
Well, a big part of it was the Crusades.
Ah, the Crusades.
Yeah, so imagine, the Holy Land, the heart of Christendom, is under threat. And these Crusades, they're considered a sacred duty, right?
Right.
And Frederick II, he had vowed multiple times that he would lead a crusade to the Holy Land.
He was going to be a crusader king.
He was, but he kept putting it off.
Procrastination nation.
Yeah, exactly. And this really, really annoyed the Pope.
I bet.
I mean, the Pope saw these delays as a deliberate snub, even accused Frederick of faking illness to get out of his commitments.
Oh, wow. Okay, so delayed crusades, check. Papal frustration, check.
Yeah.
What else was brewing in this cauldron of conflict?
So alongside those crusade tensions, you also had some serious territorial disputes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so both the Pope and Frederick, they both laid claim to central Italy. Specifically, these areas called the Papal States.
Papal states. What were those exact?
Think of them as kind of like the Pope's own mini-kingdom within Italy.
Okay.
Places like Ancona, Spoleto, they were all part of it. And the Pope, he saw these territories as essential to his power, his independence.
So not just a religious leader, but a political player as well.
Exactly.
It's all starting to make sense now. Crusade delays, territorial disputes. It's like a recipe for disaster.
It was. And eventually, all that simmering tension, it boiled over. In 1227, Pope Gregory IX took a drastic step. He excommunicated Frederick II.
Excommunicated. That's like the nuclear option, right?
It was a huge deal. In those days, it meant being cut off from the church, a spiritual death sentence. It could also really damage a ruler's political authority.
So this was the Pope basically declaring war.
In a sense, yeah. He was saying that Frederick was no longer a member of the church, and that his authority was in question.
Bold move.
It was. But even before Frederick actually went on his crusade in 1228, the Pope was already preparing for a showdown.
He wasn't messing around?
Nope. He started raising an army, he was gathering funds, and he was claiming that Frederick's people were, encroaching on papal territory.
Wait, the Pope had his own army.
He did.
This is getting juicy. Okay, so to understand the Pope's actions here, we need to put ourselves in his shoes, right?
Right.
He saw these crusades as essential. Frederick's delays. Not just an insult, but a threat to Christendom itself.
Exactly. To the Pope, this wasn't just about territory. It was about defending the church, defending the faith.
Okay, that makes sense. But armies don't come cheap. How did the Pope finance this whole operation?
Well, he got creative. He used this combination of traditional and, let's say, innovative fundraising tactics.
Oh, I like where this is going.
So he called on bishops and abbots all across Europe to chip in, send troops, send money.
The church's network, it was vast.
It was. So you can picture this. Bishops from France showing up with soldiers, coffers overflowing with donations from the faithful.
Wow.
But perhaps his most interesting move was this special tax he levied. It was called the Crusade Tenth.
The Crusade Tenth, what's that?
So tithes, right? 1/10 of your income, usually paid to the church. Well, this was a special tithe just for funding this war against Frederick.
It's like a medieval war bond.
It's a great way to think about it. He was essentially crowdfunding his military campaign.
Wow. I never would have thought of that.
And that's not all. The Pope, he was reaching out to everyone. We even have records of him contacting the King of Sweden asking for help.
The King of Sweden, that's quite a reach.
It is, but it worked. By late 1228, he had assembled a pretty impressive force.
So the stage is set. We got a pope with an army.
A very motivated
A
Pope.
very motivated pope.
Yeah.
What happens next? A pope with an army. It's like something out of a movie.
It's pretty wild, right?
So what did the Pope do with this army? Did he just march right into Frederick's territory?
He actually had a more elaborate plan in mind. Picture this. 1229, 2 papal armies are on the move. Two. It's a 2-pronged attack.
Oh, wow. Strategic.
Very strategic. So one army, it's led by this guy, John of Brienne. He's a seasoned crusader, like the real deal.
Okay.
And he's heading into those disputed papal states that we were talking about.
Right. Those central Italy territories.
Exactly. But at the same time, there's this other army led by Pandulf. He's a papal chaplain.
Okay.
And they're going after the Kingdom of Sicily itself.
Whoa, going straight for the heart of Frederick's power.
That's the idea. A classic pincer movement. Pressure from 2 sides.
So what was the Pope's endgame here? What was he hoping to achieve?
Well, if you look at the historical sources, it seems like the Pope had a pretty bold vision. He wanted to take control of Sicily.
Take it from Frederick.
Take it from Frederick, yeah. And he wanted to put it directly under papal rule, governed by his own people.
Wow. Ambitious.
It was an ambitious plan. And to really lock things down, they even wanted to capture all of Sicily's ports.
Really cut Frederick off. Smart.
It was. Basically, they wanted to make sure that if Frederick ever did come back from the crusade, he'd be trapped.
Wow. Okay, so did this plan work? Did the Pope's forces manage to gain the upper hand?
Well, at first, they did have some success. Like, they managed to capture Monte Cassino.
Monte Cassino.
It's a monastery, but it was also strategically really important.
Okay.
And they also besieged Capua. That was a major city in southern Italy.
So they were making progress. Frederick's got to be feeling the heat now, right? Off on crusade, and meanwhile back at home.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't looking good for him. But, and this is important, you should never underestimate Frederick II.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. This was a guy known for being cunning, resilient. And in June of 1229, he made a dramatic return to Italy.
He cut his crusade short.
He did. He had to deal with this invasion.
Wow, that must have thrown the Pope's plans into disarray.
Absolutely. It was a huge turning point in the war. Think about it. The papal forces, they thought Frederick was either dead or stuck in the Holy Land.
Right.
And suddenly, boom, he's back. It was a massive blow to their morale. But on the flip side, Frederick's own troops, they were energized by his return.
Yeah, their leader's back. Time to rally.
Exactly. And Frederick, he knew how to capitalize on this shift in momentum.
Oh, yeah.
He was a brilliant military strategist. He immediately launched a counteroffensive, and within a few months, he had pushed back the papal armies and regained control of his territories.
So the tables had turned. Frederick was back in charge.
He was.
Did he march on Rome? Take the fight to the Pope?
That's what a lot of people expected him to do. But Frederick, he was also a shrewd politician. He knew that attacking Rome directly would be a very risky move.
Risky, how so?
Well, for one thing, it could have alienated some of his powerful allies. Plus, it could have destabilized Christendom even further.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So instead of all-out war, Frederick decided to open negotiations with the Pope.
The diplomatic route. Interesting. Was this just a strategic decision, or was Frederick genuinely interested in peace?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, he was definitely a pragmatic ruler. He knew that a prolonged conflict wouldn't be good for anyone. But you also have to remember that even though he had been excommunicated, Frederick still saw himself as a defender of Christendom.
So he wasn't interested in destroying the papacy altogether.
Exactly. He wanted to find a way to coexist, to resolve this conflict without tearing Christendom apart.
Okay, so negotiations it is. What happened next? How did these talks play out?
Well, it wasn't exactly a quick and easy process. It took months and months of back and forth.
I can imagine.
There were intermediaries going back and forth between the 2 sides, trying to hammer out a deal.
Like who? Who were these intermediaries?
Oh, you had German princes, members of the Teutonic Knights. They were all trying to find some common ground.
High-stakes medieval diplomacy.
Yeah.
So, did they finally reach an agreement?
They did. After months of these really tense discussions, they finally came to an agreement in July of 1230.
1230, okay. And what was this agreement called?
The Treaty of San Germano.
The Treaty of San Germano. Okay.
Right.
And what did it say?
Well, a few key things. First, Frederick was absolved of his excommunication.
So back in the good graces of the church.
Back in the fold, yeah. And there was a general amnesty granted to all of his supporters.
So no hard feelings, at least officially.
Right. And importantly, Frederick got to keep Sicily and those disputed territories in central Italy.
So he essentially got what he wanted.
In a way, yes, but it wasn't a complete victory for either side. There weren't any major territorial changes, but the Pope did get Frederick to publicly acknowledge that he had messed up, and eventually Frederick did fulfill his promise to go on a crusade.
So a compromise of sorts. Each side got something out of it. But I'm curious about the bigger picture here. This whole conflict, it really challenged the traditional power dynamic between the church and secular rulers.
It did. And the thing is, the War of the Keys, it wasn't just some theological debate. It was an actual war.
Right.
A war waged by the Pope against a Christian emperor.
And that raised some serious questions about the limits of papal authority.
It did. People started asking, does the Pope have the right to wage war, to raise armies, to levy taxes for those armies?
Right. It challenged the very notion of what it meant to be the Pope.
Exactly. It wasn't just about territory or politics. It was about the very nature of spiritual and temporal power.
And this is where that two swords doctrine comes in, right?
Yes. The two swords.
You mentioned it earlier. Remind me, what's that all about?
Okay, so the two swords doctrine, it's this idea that there are two kinds of power in the world. The spiritual sword, which belongs to the Pope, and the material sword, which belongs to kings and emperors.
So two different spheres of authority.
Right. And the War of the Keys, it forced people to ask, which sword was more powerful? Did the Pope overstep his bounds by wielding both?
Heavy stuff. So how did people react to all of this? Were there any critics of the Pope's actions?
Oh, yeah. There was definitely pushback. Like, if you look at the chronicles from that time, you see a lot of unease and even disapproval of the Pope's military campaign.
So it wasn't just Frederick and his supporters who were unhappy.
No, not at all. And what's really interesting is that this criticism wasn't just coming from theologians and scholars. It was coming from all sorts of people.
Really? Like who?
Well, get this. Even the troubadours, those wandering poet musicians, they were getting in on the action.
Troubadours. Those guys who sang about courtly love and chivalry.
The very same. But they also used their songs to comment on current events. And some of them, they wrote songs that openly mocked the Pope's military adventures.
Wow. Diss tracks medieval style. I love
Actually,
it.
it's pretty great, right? They were using satire and wit to challenge authority, to question the legitimacy of the Pope's war against another Christian ruler.
So they were like the social commentators of their day.
Exactly. They weren't afraid to speak truth to power, even if that power was the Pope.
So it wasn't just theologians and scholars raising concerns. Even popular culture was reflecting this growing unease with the Pope's actions.
It was. And it wasn't just the troubadours. Even Frederick himself used words as weapons.
Oh, how so?
Well, while he was still in the Holy Land, he wrote this letter where he basically blasted the Pope for the invasion. He called it shocking, a violation of Christian law. And he was really smart about it. He even used scripture to support his arguments, to make himself look like the good guy.
So it was a war of words as well as a war of swords. Everyone was trying to control the narrative.
They were. And it's a good reminder that history isn't just about events. It's about how those events are interpreted and remembered.
Okay, so we've got the war, negotiations, the propaganda battles. What about the aftermath? How did all of this impact the relationship between the church and secular rulers?
Yeah, it makes you realize that history is never simple. There are always so many perspectives, so many layers to uncover. Absolutely. And sometimes it's the smaller details that really bring those layers to life, the things you wouldn't necessarily find in a textbook.
Oh, I love those little details. They're like hidden gems. Do any come to mind when you think about the War of the Keys?
Well, one thing that always struck me is this.
Mm-hmm.
The papal armies, they actually had a special insignia they wore. Symbols of keys.
Keys, like actual keys. What was that all about?
Yeah, actual keys. It was all about symbolism. The keys represented the Pope's authority, kind of like those crosses that the Crusaders wore.
Makes sense.
And some historians even think that this key symbolism is where the whole War of the Keys name comes from.
Oh, wow. I never knew that. So even in the middle of a war, they're thinking about their branding.
Exactly. And both sides were very aware of the importance of public opinion. This was a conflict that involved religion, right? So winning the hearts and minds of the people was crucial.
Yeah, you can't just win on the battlefield. You have to win the PR battle, too.
Exactly. And both the Pope and Frederick, they used all sorts of strategies to bolster their image and, discredit their opponent.
Classic propaganda tactics.
Right.
Any particularly juicy examples?
Well, Pope Gregory IX, he really went all out in trying to portray Frederick as a threat to Christendom. Like at one point, he even accused Frederick of colluding with the
Ah,
Ayyubids.
you bigs.
Yeah, those were the Muslim rulers in the Holy Land at the time.
Oh, right. So the Pope was basically saying that Frederick was siding with the enemy.
Pretty much. And that kind of accusation back then, it could be devastating to a ruler's reputation.
Yeah, talk about a smear campaign. And what
Yeah.
about Frederick? Did he just sit back and take it?
Oh, no, no, no. Frederick was very good at playing the PR game, too. In his letters to other European rulers, he presented himself as the victim of an overzealous pope, this pious and unjustly persecuted ruler who was just trying to defend Christendom.
So both sides were spinning their own narratives. It makes you wonder how much of what we know about this conflict is actually true.
That's the challenge with history, isn't it? We have to try to sift through all the biases, all the different perspectives to get to something resembling the truth.
It's like a giant puzzle.
Mm.
Speaking of puzzles, were there any aspects of the War of the Keys that you found particularly puzzling or intriguing?
I always found it fascinating that the Pope's plan to capture all of Sicily's ports ultimately failed.
Didn't we talk about that earlier? It seemed like a solid strategy.
It did. But the Pope overlooked one crucial factor: the Sicilian people themselves.
Ah, the human element.
Yeah.
Always a wild card.
Right. Frederick, he had spent a lot of time in Sicily. He built relationships with local leaders. He worked to create a sense of unity among the people.
So he wasn't just some distant emperor to them.
Exactly. And when he came back from the crusade, they welcomed him as a liberator, not a tyrant. They supported him, they gave him troops and resources.
So in a way, Frederick's connection with the Sicilian people was his secret weapon.
It was. And it's a good reminder that even in medieval warfare, popular support could make all the difference.
Okay, so we've talked about the war, the negotiations, the propaganda battles, the human element. What about the lasting impact? How did this whole experience shape Frederick and Pope Gregory?
Well, their rivalry definitely didn't end with the Treaty of San Germano. This clash was just one chapter in a much longer power struggle between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire.
Oh, so the drama continued.
Oh, yeah. Frederick, he clashed with other popes later on. He got excommunicated again. It was a constant balancing act between secular and religious authority.
Sounds exhausting.
It was a tumultuous time, but it makes you think, doesn't it, about the nature of power, about the role of religion in politics.
It does. And it's amazing how relevant those questions still are today.
It really is. I mean, we might not have emperors and popes battling it out anymore, but the themes of power, authority, the struggle for influence, those are timeless.
They are. And that's what I love about these deep dives. We uncover these historical events, but we also find these connections to our own world, to the challenges we face today.
Exactly. History isn't just about the past. It's about understanding the present and maybe even shaping the future.
I love that. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from crusades to excommunications, from papal armies to troubadour diss tracks. What a journey.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the War of the Keys. It's been a pleasure, as always.
The pleasure's all mine.
And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring history, keep asking questions, and keep those minds engaged. We'll be back soon with another fascinating deep dive. Until then, take care.